Should you buy property now or should you wait until maybe there's a property market crash? Now, this is a question that I'm frequently asked. In fact, I think every single year for the past 22 years, I've been teaching other people how to become successful investors. I always get people asking me this question because people are trying to wait for the perfect time to get into the property market. So in this video, we're going to talk all about the 18-year property cycle and what that suggests should be happening to the property market. I'm also going to identify my personal view on what I think is the very best time for you to be buying property so you don't miss out. So first of all, let's look at this 18-year property cycle model. Where does it come from? What does it mean? How reliable is it? Well, this was created by economist Fred Harrison, who looked back over hundreds of years of property data. And he said that every 18 years there was a property market correction. Now, actually, this model correctly forecast the 1990 property market crash and also 2008. But let's look at both of those. So in 1990, we had interest rates go up to 15%, which many people just could not afford to pay, and that's what caused the massive market crash. And also, new investors weren't buying, knowing their mortgage was going to be so expensive. And then in 2008, we had the property market crash due to the global financial crisis. And that was caused because in the early 2000s, there was this self-certification borrowing. What that meant was you could sign to say you could afford to pay a mortgage without actually proving it. So many homeowners who could never afford to pay their mortgage and many property investors who were over-leveraging were also getting mortgages very, very easily. This was all toxic debt that wasn't going to be paid back, and it came to light in 2007, and thus the global financial crisis started. Property prices crashed in 2008, and it was actually very difficult to get mortgages to buy properties because the banks were reeling because of all the losses they had. So, often things happen in the economy that cause these property market crashes. Now, if you backdate to the last crash and then work forward, the 18-year cycle suggests that in 2026, there should be a property market crash. The question is that likely to happen? Now, if you look at Fred's model, what happens for the last couple of years up to the boom, prices are going crazy. People are paying over the odds for a property, which frankly isn't happening right now. But if you think back a few years, back to 2021, there was this incredible unexpected boom during COVID. Now, that happened again for a couple of reasons. The government recognised they have to support the UK economy. The UK economy is typically made up of retail and also property. And with the retail sector being decimated because of COVID, property was the one thing holding up the UK economy. So the government introduced stamp duty holidays. That meant they raised the threshold up to which you didn't have to pay stamp duty. This meant many first-time buyers and homeowners jumped at the opportunity to come and buy a property without having to pay the usual stamp duty. Of course, that stimulated the market. Also, lots of people who were living in apartments in cities wanted to move out of cities, so properties in the countryside and rural areas and towns also shot up in value. And also, the government introduced the bounce back loans designed to help businesses that are in difficulty. That money was never intended to be used in property, but a lot of the money was taken from those businesses and used to grow the property market. So for these reasons, we saw this unexpected boom in property prices up until probably 22-23. Now in 2023, we saw the effect of the rising interest rates that came in from February 22. Now we had record low Bank of England base rates at 0.5% for a decade, and all the investors and property owners have got very, very used to that. But when interest rates started to go up, as they were bound to do, because the Bank of England was using interest rates as a macroeconomic tool to control inflation. Inflation had gone up to over 10% during the COVID years, and the government were committed to bring that rate down. That's not good for many, many factors, and so interest rates shot up massively, and it did work. It did bring inflation down. Now we're still at about 3.8% inflation at the moment, not where the Bank of England wanted to be at their target 2%. That's why interest rates have stagnated at 4%, and really what happens to the property market will partly be determined by what happens to interest rates. If interest rates continue to come down, which is what is expected if the government can get inflation under control, then I think we will see the property market start to pick up and actually grow in 2026. If, however, interest rates, for whatever reason, start to go up and it's more unaffordable to get new mortgages and current owners are struggling to pay their mortgages, then I think we could see a further correction down in property prices. Now, we had this incredible boom in 21 and 22, and we've seen prices come down over the last couple of years. So maybe we are actually having this correction. Maybe we are having this 18-year cycle. It's just happened a little bit earlier, where we got to a peak in 2021, and for the last couple of years, it started to come down. When should you be buying property? Now, you might think, well, surely I want to be buying when property is going up, because I'm going to buy now, it's going to be worth more in the future. And whilst I agree with that general sentiment, I want to take the thinking another stage for you. Because if the property market is coming down, that means there aren't that many people buying. And so if we are buying, we can get a much better deal. Now you might say, well, hang on, Simon, why would I buy property here if in 6 months or 12 months it's going to be a lower value? Now, if you were buying and then looking to sell in the short term, that would be a problem, because that's when people lose money. If someone buys a property at a high price, they sell it for a low price, of course they're crystallizing loss and they're going to lose money. However, if you've read my book, Property Magic, and I do hope you have, and you've read the 5 golden rules of property investing, you'll remember rule number 4 is we want to hold property for the long term. That's because instead of trying to guess when's the best time to buy, we just buy property and wait. Now, of course, we want to make sure that if we're buying property, we also follow golden rule number 2 and number 3. Number 2 is we only buy in an area with strong rental demand. It means if the current tenants move out, we can quickly find other tenants to come and move in and pay a fair market rent. And right now, there is huge demand for good rental accommodation in the UK. And golden rule number 3 is we only buy property that gives us positive cash flow. That means at the end of the month, after taking the rent, less the mortgage, the insurance, the management, the maintenance, etc., all the costs, there must be profit left over. So if we're following the golden rules and we know we can rent it out and we know we make cash flow, why would we want to sell in the short term anyway? The way you really make money in property is long-term buy and hold. On average, property prices tend to double every 10 years. Now, it doesn't happen every 10 years for every property. That is an average over the last 40, 50 years. But I've certainly seen that properties I bought 30 years ago have doubled and doubled again in that 30-year period. So I personally experienced that, and it definitely happens. Why does it happen? Well, we live on an island with a limited supply of accommodation and an increasing population. The government and the opposition both agree we need 300,000 new homes every single year, and there's no way we're meeting that demand. So thus, long-term, property prices go up and rents also go up as well. So if you're holding long-term, and if you know you can rent it out and making cash flow, why would you bother about short-term fluctuations in price? Now you might say, yeah, but if I can buy it when the price has gone down, I can wait to that point, I'm paying less for my property. And that might be the case, but what if prices don't go down? What if we don't see a property market crash in 2026 or 2027? What if property prices actually start to go up because interest rates have come down, because there's more confidence in the market, and people are aware of what's happening to the Renters' Rights Bill? And so because of that, we might see property prices go up. In fact, I think we probably will. So the point is, if you sit back and wait too long, there's actually a huge opportunity cost. Yes, in theory, maybe you can save some money by buying at a lower price if you wait till prices have gone down, but think about the lost rental income in that time. And if you're sitting to wait for the right time, most people will miss the opportunity, and maybe you get back into the market years later when you could have missed some great capital growth. If you bought property in 2020, when we had the first COVID came, there was lots of panic, people were dumping property, actually you would have some really good capital growth over the next few years. But most people sat back and waited because they just weren't sure. And I understand that. It's a very natural human instinct, fear. People worry about making mistakes, they worry about losing money. But as I said before, if you follow the 5 golden rules of Property Magic, you can very much minimize the risks, and maximize your return. So in conclusion to this video, I would say now is always a good time to buy, as long as you know what you're doing, regardless of what's happening in the market. And yes, properties might be a bit cheaper next year, they might be a bit more expensive next year. Frankly, I don't care. What I want to do is take advantage of the fact that right now, most people are waiting, they're standing back, which means there's not much competition. And we always want to work to find and help motivated sellers. And if there aren't that many buyers right now, I want to be there finding those people, helping them, picking us up some great deals and helping those people solve their property problems. When you're investing in property, I always like the ethical win-win solution. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You'll have almost 30,000 subscribers now. Hit the bell icon to make sure you're notified anytime a new video comes out. And comment below, are you going to be buying right now, or are you going to wait till next year to see what happens to the property market? I'd love to hear. I'll come and respond to some of your questions. Until next time, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill.